Well, good morning. Welcome to Christ Table. So glad that you are with us this morning. It's so fun to see everybody signing on this morning, especially because uh, technical difficulty or two this morning. As you can see, I'm not in my normal location. We are actually in Gulf Shores, Alabama this morning, having celebrated a couple of days for Christmas and the holiday with family. And I'm kind of always at the mercy of all of the technology and Wi-Fi connections where we are. So I am glad, though, that you are with us this morning, wherever you are. I see that people are joining in from the north, which is a little cooler this morning than perhaps it is in sunny Florida. So good to see all of you. Actually, today is going to be a little low key. Maggie has the weekend off one more time, but she sends her best and the Grandland's best to you over your holiday. And this morning, actually, we have the privilege of one of my friends, Paul Zach, is going to be with us to provide a few songs this morning. And so that's going to feel a little different, a little fun. And so he sent in a few musical selections for us today, which I know are going to be a blessing to you. We're going to do communion a little later in the service together. So make sure that you have something in order to take communion. I actually have the very end of the fruit cake here with me from the holiday and the cup of coffee, but whatever you have to receive communion with will be perfectly okay. And I also would love to hear, as you're signing on this morning, what your hope and wishes are for the new year. Whenever we gathered with family, one of the questions was, what is your prediction for the new year? And so they recorded everybody's prediction for the new year. Didn't want to hear any resolutions, which I thought was interesting. In fact, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to talk for just a brief bit about resolutions, but didn't want to hear any of the resolutions, but wanted to know the predictions, what you thought would come from 2022. And so I would love to hear from you this morning. As an answer to that question is what you think will come in 2022. And it looks as though if you're in the north, Kim, what will come is more cold and more snow. But I know a lot of people enjoy that, and a lot of people, like the Youngs, enjoy the sunny summers and winters as well. Well, this morning, as we jump into where we're going, I want us to be aware that prayer is something that is super important for us to participate in as a community, especially as we're rolling from one year into the next. A lot of the burdens and hopes and dreams and regrets and losses that we have experienced really bring themselves up inside of ourselves during these transitions, these milestones from one moment or one year into the next. And so this morning, I want us to kind of for a moment sit in those and reflect on those as we move into whatever it may be that is next for us. And so feel free to begin to post your comments or prayer requests, your praises, the things that you are proud of, that you're predicting, that you're hopeful for, or maybe even that you're fearful of as we walk through this new milestone transition into 2022. And Paul is going to bring our first word.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Paul. Paul will be back in just a moment to continue with us in music. But as I said, I think that prayer is a super important thing for us to participate in as we are moving into this mile marker transition between 2021 and 2022. And as I've been reflecting on that this week, it is a reminder to me that we should not wrap up a bow too quickly on the package that was 2021 in order to open anew something in 2022. Many of us walk into 2022 with grief, with regrets, mixed with maybe hope and fear. It's bittersweet sometimes, but I think all of us want to experience, hopefully, each other more deeply, experience love more deeply in the days ahead, hope more deeply in the days ahead, and hopefully experience God more deeply in the days ahead. That is my prayer for you. Whatever your prayer may be, I invite you to place it in the comments right now, wherever you're watching, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or on our website, christtable.today. We want to pray with you. Even if you are watching this by delay, go ahead and place your prayer requests in there. Maybe you don't have a request or a need. Maybe you just have a praise. Maybe you just have the need to thank God for something that He has done in your journey and in your life this year, or these past few weeks, or maybe even these last few days. I know that many of us too are struggling medically, or know someone who's struggling medically, whether it be with COVID or a canceled surgery, or struggling with something that maybe is upcoming in the new year. You have this surgery that is planned, or this thing that you're facing. And I know that represents a lot of people in our community. And I want to continue to invite you to place those prayer requests in as we continue to pray this morning. And I want to invite you to come together with us in prayer. And at the end of this, we will join together in the Lord's Prayer. So let us pray. Lord, this morning we are thankful to you and for how you have walked us through the ups and the downs of 2021, and you've brought us to this moment, whether we feel as though we are at the top of the roller coaster, the bottom of the roller coaster, or somewhere in between. We are thankful that you are here with us in this moment. There are moments, I know, Lord, where we don't feel like you are with us, but your word promises that you're with us, that you are beside us each and every step of the way. I do pray, Lord, that we would be able to feel your presence. And I pray, Lord, that we would be able to feel your peace, that in this coming year, you would be with us. I pray, Lord, for those who are worrying, who are filled with anxiety for what may be coming in the next few days or weeks, Lord, may you give them a sense of your peace. I pray, Lord, as well, for all of those who are facing uncertainty, that you would just cover them with your presence. I pray, Lord, for those who are feeling disconnected from you, from community, from loved ones, that they would be able to feel your joy and your peace. And I pray, Lord, for all of us, that we would be able to have a stronger feeling of you in the coming days ahead. Lord, would you heal division and hurt? Would you give us hope and peace? Would you give us joy and love, and maybe even a bit of laughter along the way? And Lord, we together pray these words to the prayer that you gave us so long ago. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
With one breath, Hosanna we cry. With the next one, we say crucify. With one voice, we praise your name. With the same voice, we condemn you to shame. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna to the Lord. With palm leaves, we welcome your reign. With twisted thorns, we crown you with pain. You wash our feet to show us your love. We wash our hands of your innocent blood. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna to the Lord. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna to the Lord. We claim you when you come in power, but we leave you in your terrible hour. We hail you for victory won, but we mock you as you say it is done.
Well, Christmas is almost over. You're saying, wait a minute, Pastor Kevin, Christmas is already over. Well, no, it's not actually. Christmas actually began on December 25th and continues all the way through January 5th, which is the 12th day of Christmas. And then Epiphany, as we spoke about last week, is on January 6th, which makes today, believe it or not, the 9th day of Christmas. How wonderful it is to be now on the 9th day of Christmas, which means that today is the day for 9 ladies dancing. Now, growing up, we weren't allowed to dance, and so when we sang this song, we actually had to skip this line or kind of mumble it because we weren't supposed to be dancing, so that wasn't something that was allowed. So, what is Christmas? Well, Christmas is this time where we are supposed to be celebrating the birth, the arrival of Jesus Christ. And one of the things that I noticed over the last month is that a lot of times whenever I was listening to churches where people talk about Christmas, they would immediately rush to the crucifixion. It was like he was born to die. Jesus is the reason for the season, but remember, there's going to be a cross and there's going to be a tomb, and there's going to be a resurrection. And those are super important things. I don't want to say that those things are unimportant, but it was almost as though oftentimes whenever they were talking about the birth, you couldn't talk about the birth because you had to rush to the death of Jesus. Those things are both really important, but I think that there was a danger, as I was thinking, of us just rushing through the birth to get to something else. We put our Christmas decorations away. We put our tree out beside the road before we left to come to Gulf Shores, Alabama. And it kind of hurt my heart a little bit to have to do that, because Christmas isn't supposed to be one day and done. Christmas is actually supposed to be, can I put it back up again here? Christmas is supposed to be 12 days. You should traditionally leave up the Christmas tree. You should keep lighting the lights in the house and the candles in the windows. You should continue celebrating and even giving presents and singing songs like Joy to the World. All those radio stations that continue to play Christmas music well after Christmas Day are actually perhaps the most spiritual among us, believe it or not. We shouldn't rush through Christmas into something else, even if that something else is Epiphany. In fact, there were very specific rules over the years, traditionally, for how the ancient church was allowed to celebrate those 12 days of Christmas. And remember, we're only on the 9th day right now of Christmas, so there's still time which we're supposed to be celebrating Christmas. And one of the primary things that you were not allowed to do during the Christmas celebration, get this, you're going to love this, one of the primary things that you weren't allowed to do during the Christmas celebration was fast. You were not allowed to withhold good food or good drink from yourself during the Christmas time. So for 12 days, here we go, no fasting, which means for 12 days after Christmas, no dieting. So for those of you who had a New Year's resolution that began yesterday that involved in some way or other cutting back on something or other, food, drink, or otherwise, you might be, if I can just say it, you might be doing it wrong. So for those of you maybe who have even on day 2 already dropped the ball and pushed that start date back to Monday, to tomorrow, January 3rd, the early church would say, no, you're not even allowed to start that fasting until January 3rd. You have to wait until at least January 7th, January 6th, 7th. Once Epiphany starts, then once Christmas tide is over, you can begin back into your normal routines. And if you want a new normal routine to be cutting back or reducing something, started then. But during Christmas, it is a time for celebration. It's a time for excess. It's a time for joy. It's a time for real butter and whole milk. It's a time for lots of whipped cream and the good chocolate. It's time for all of those things, not time for cutting back. Why is that? Because Christmas is a celebration of the arrival of the Messiah. That Messiah, Matthew chapter 2, verse 2, says that Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea during the reign of King Herod. And about that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." Now, as we have talked through that passage last week, I want to continue, though, to focus on that passage just a little bit, because as we said, the wise men traditionally have not yet arrived to the nativity of Jesus Christ. And so we can't quite yet put those figurines into the nativity set. We should really wait until January 6th, Epiphany, if we're going to play by the rules of church tradition. But you do whatever you want. But Traditionally, we would not really be talking or celebrating the arrival of the wise men until that day Epiphany, which means revelation or aha. I kind of imagine Epiphany as being that light bulb moment where the light bulb goes off above your head, aha, because there are a lot of aha moments that are celebrated on that day of Epiphany. So I want to talk for just a moment or two about those wise men, those magi. And I want to do it by way of giving you this map. Now, here's a map of first century Middle East, Africa, and Asia, as we know the continents and the areas now. Obviously, those weren't the names way back then of those areas. And so what this shows is the names of the groups of people who were living in those times and who was controlling what. And you can see around the Mediterranean Sea, there's a large portion of red, and so you can see the Roman Empire. And over on the right side, or on the eastern side of the Mediterranean Sea, is Israel, and where Jesus was born. In fact, I'm going to put a little star, a little gold star up right there where Bethlehem is and where Jesus is in this moment in Matthew chapter 2. And so when we read this, we discover that there are people outside, maybe well outside of that red Roman ruled area, that are aware that something is going on, something exciting has happened. Now, it says that they came from the east, but it isn't really any more specific than that. And so we're not sure exactly how far from the east they came. Many people would say, and I think it's a really great theory, that they came from the Persia area, which is where ancient Babylon was, where Israel was held in captivity for many generations. This is modern day Iraq, Pakistan, and this area of the Middle East. And it is quite likely that in those days, Persia, from the ancient Persian Empire, is where the Magi, the wise men, the three kings came from. But it may well be that they came from any further. Now, probably not the Orient per se, but it could be that they came as far away as modern day India and made that travel following that star towards Bethlehem. But there's an interesting theory which has come up rather recently in church history that says that maybe the Magi or the wise men came from much, much closer, from the area of Nabateen. Now, you will notice on the map that Nabateen is right next to the star, just to the right, in this kind of light green, tealish blue shaded area. I'm a little colorblind, so I hope I said enough colors to hit one of them or all of them correctly. But what I want to do is I want to put up, just a little arrow there, because they would not have had to come from very far, but they would have been coming from the right direction in order to get there, but they wouldn't have had to travel quite as far. Now this area, Nabateen, is our modern day Jordan area, and there were kings, there were magi. In fact, we have lots of coins and history and sculptures of the kings and the leaders and the astronomers and astrologers who were a part of the Nabatean kingdom in Jordan. Now, you may have never heard of that word Nabateen, but you may have heard of the word Petra and the city that is carved into stone in Jordan. And so if you've heard of Petra, or you have seen or been to this location, then this is the area that in those days was a Nabatean area. Had been there for about 300 years or so before Jesus. And interestingly, wherever those kings came from, you'll see that Mary and Joseph came from Nazareth all the way down to Jerusalem and through Jerusalem into Bethlehem. But it seems as though what happened is that these so-called wise men, wherever they came from, Nabateen, from Persia, from India, all end up in the wrong place. The star is leading them to Bethlehem, but they end up in Jerusalem instead. We call them wise men But have you ever thought about the fact that they actually end up in the wrong place? They're supposed to be in Bethlehem, but they end up in Jerusalem. And because they do end up in Jerusalem, they set off alarm all around Jerusalem. So the text tells us that King Herod was deeply disturbed when they show up in Jerusalem with this news. And everybody in Jerusalem was concerned as well, because anything that concerned Herod concerned the people. He was not a very nice dude. So Herod calls a meeting of the leading priests and the religious leaders of the law and asks, where is this Messiah to be born? And so Herod now is on the case. They go to Herod, and that is a huge mistake. Why did they go to Herod, though? I don't think actually it was by accident that they end up going to Herod and that they end up in Jerusalem. They go to Herod and they end up in Jerusalem because what we know about the Nabatean king, who was Artaxerxes IV, is that he very much wanted to have a good relationship with Herod, an alliance with Herod. We also know that the Nabatean kingdom was famous in those days for two things: for their production of frankincense and myrrh. And so this actually is a clue that it may have actually been Nabatean kings, magi, wise men who come because they bring frankincense and myrrh. If it was the Persians or perhaps those from the area that we know today as India who come, it's likely that they picked up those gifts as they passed through Jordan, the Nabatean kingdom, on their way in there. So the frankincense and myrrh, whether it was Nabatean kings who came or whether it was somebody else who passed through, we know that it's likely that those gifts were bought last minute, like we sometimes buy last minute gifts at Target or Walmart or truck stops on the way to our Christmas gatherings. It seems as though these magi did the same to go with the gold. They picked up a few extra gifts along the way. Or if they were actually from Nabatean, it's probably because they wanted an alliance with Herod. And so what they do is, instead of following star to Bethlehem, they say, oh, we can actually go to Herod and to Jerusalem first and maybe celebrate this. And that is a big mistake, because Herod is a crazy person. He was paranoid. He was vicious. In fact, Herod actually murdered a few of his own sons, and his wife and everyone in his family was afraid, because Herod was afraid that they were always plotting against him for the throne. And so he was not above taking the life of one of his sons or daughters in order to protect himself and his throne. In fact, when Caesar Augustus, whose name you'll recognize, heard that Herod had killed his own children in order to protect his throne out of fear, not out of any reality, Caesar Augustus is said to have said, I'd rather be a pig in Herod's home than his son. The pigs were safe because Herod couldn't eat bacon, couldn't eat anything from pigs because of Jewish law. Sons, not as safe as the pigs in the home. So, of course, Herod perceives this newborn king as a threat. And the wise men, they never should have gone to Jerusalem. They should have just followed the star. So, after his interview, the wise men went on their way, and the star that they had seen in the east guides them to Bethlehem. And it went ahead of them, and it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were filled with joy. And have you ever thought about this line before? Have you ever thought about this line, that when they saw the star, they were filled with joy? You see, the wise men are lost in Jerusalem. They have taken a detour that they should not have taken and ended up in a place that they should not be. And it seems as though maybe the star even went out while they were in Jerusalem. They lost the trail to Jesus. How do we know that they lost the trail to Jesus and that they end up in the wrong place? Well, because the star was bringing them to Bethlehem, but they go to Jerusalem instead. And so we know that they weren't supposed to be there because of the alarms that are set off, and because whenever they get back on the right path, it says that they saw the star. And why were they filled with joy? They were filled with joy because the star comes back. And they weren't certain that if they got back on the right path, that the star would come back. They went to the center of power, expecting to find a king, and they lose the trail. They lost the guide. They lost the star. They followed the star all that way, but they lose it whenever they enter the palace, trying to make good relationships with a crazy person rather than trying to go directly to God and worship Him. And they couldn't see the star until they got their feet moving in the right direction again. Think about that. The trappings of power and being powerful, having powerful friends, had absolutely blinded them. And I think for us, what we can get out of that is simply this, is that if you're having trouble finding Jesus as the Magi were, you may have been drawn to the wrong place by the wrong things. They see something that nobody else sees and they begin to follow it. But along the way, they are waylaid. They're waylaid by greed. They're waylaid by power. And they're distracted. And it sets off alarms. And it almost short circuits the entire story and circumvents God's plan. There are moments, maybe in these last few days or weeks, or maybe in the last year, where we've been waylaid by something. We thought we were headed in the right direction. We thought we sensed God and were moving towards His best for us, and some distraction got in the way. And we lost sight. And we are in these moments where transitions of time happen, given an opportunity to wake up and to choose a different path, to head in a different direction, or to head back in the direction that we should have been going. And the choice is ours. Have you been drawn to the wrong place by the wrong things? The wise men, they certainly were, and were not wise in that moment. And it wasn't until the wise men leave the palace that they find their way again. Their guide to the child returns, and when they saw the star, the text says they were overwhelmed with joy because God hadn't forgotten them. And He hasn't forgotten you. And He was still there ready to guide them. And He's still there ready to guide you as well. And so the text goes on to say that they entered the house and they saw the child with His mother Mary, and they bowed down and they worshipped Him. Then they opened their treasure chest and they gave Him gifts of gold, drum roll, and frankincense and myrrh. It's a clue. When it was time to leave, verse 12, they returned to their own country by another route, for God had warned them in a dream to not return to Herod. It's good advice, right? Garrett Vick-Ray says that whoever these magi were, wherever they came from, we don't know much, but we know what led them. And they followed a star. And I think he's right whenever he makes this conclusion, that the star that guided the wise men to Bethlehem is not what guides them away from Bethlehem. Think about that for just a moment. What got them to Bethlehem and to Jesus, the star, even though they took a divergent path in order to get there. But once they get to Jesus, it's not the star which leads them back away. And maybe this week, in celebration of Epiphany and the end of the 12 days of Christmastide, maybe reading the story of what happens after the wise men from verse 13 in Matthew 2 on is a great devotional practice for you and I. Because they're led away as certainly as they were led to Bethlehem. But it's not the star that guides them. It actually is the Spirit of the one who they meet in Bethlehem who guides them away from there. The Lord, an angel of the Lord, it says. And I think that it is right to say that we have to put away at some point the trees and the lights and the star on the tree in order to be guided by something else. What has guided us to and through Christmas is not going to be what guides us away. Epiphany is a line in the sand. And at some point, we do have to move on from the birth into the wonders of the rest of the story of Jesus and into the wonders of the rest of your story as well. You're going to have to find new guides into the new year. You have to go by other roads into this new year that God is giving to you and to us. Think about that for just a moment, that there will be guides, though, guiding you along the way. The promise of Christmas is not just that God is with us, but that God is always with you. And that road isn't always going to be easy. It's a dangerous road from the manger. It's a dangerous road from the manger for the Magi, and it's a dangerous road from the manger and Christmas for you as well. I can't promise you that 2022 is going to be an easy, peaceful road that has no pain or suffering or trauma or drama. But I can promise you that there will be a guide along the way for you, walking with you and leading you when necessary, if you will allow it. There are always going to be power-hungry people along your path, power-hungry people like Herod, who are intent on forcing you or manipulating you into following their path. There are always going to be those people who are going to be alarmed because you're following the path of Jesus, because you're trying to walk in lockstep with him. You can't allow their alarm to be your alarm. You can't allow their fear and anxiety to be your fear and anxiety. You can't allow their goals. Herod's goals were power, prestige, money, control, manipulation. There are going to be those people in your journey in this year who try to distract you and use you for their purposes. Like the Magi, I want to encourage you to keep your eyes on Jesus and follow him, and don't get sucked into those things. There are going to be people who are going to make fools of themselves to support those in power. There are going to be people who leverage and allow themselves to be leveraged for other people's pursuits. Don't let that be you. You have a path that God has called you on, that you should walk and not allow yourself to be distracted from. Christ has come, and he's come for you. Those who find our way by stars, by angels, and by the Spirit of God to Bethlehem have to find our way from there. We have to find another road home, and that means finding another road through 2022. The guides that brought you to faith may not be the guides that will carry you from there. Think about that. The people who have brought you to this place in your life may not be the people whom God has to be the best guides for you from here. It may well be that you need new guides. It may well be that you need new people. It may well be that you need new paths. Whomever those guides and paths are, wherever they take you, ensure that they're taking you on the path of Christ and not on someone or something's other path. And know that wherever the path takes you, you are never alone.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I fixed upon it, mount of God's unchanging love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God, he to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace, how great a debt daily I'm constrained to be. Let that grace now, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above.
Well, it is time for us to participate together in communion, and I'm so glad that you have stayed with us for so long today. And I'm also glad that you worked through the technical difficulties. If you have some things ready for communion, that's great. If you have bread or wine or grape juice, that's good. If you have pancakes or muffins or milk or syrup or water, coffee, whatever you have at work. I have a cup of coffee here this morning that's getting a little cold because I went a little long, and I have what is left of the Christmas fruitcake, which I am going to enjoy for communion. And so feel free to run and get those if you don't have them. Loretta, I love this. You no longer take your artificial tree down. It stays up all year decorated with hearts and red ribbons. I love that. Allow the spirit of Christmas to fill the entire year. And Tony, of course they did and got lost. If they were women, they would have asked for directions. I thought about making that joke, and then I thought, what would Sally think? I need one of those little bracelets, WWSD, what would Sally do? And I thought, sometimes my humor gets me in trouble. So I'm glad that you made the joke, and I'm glad that because you're such a stand-up guy, that it wasn't too lowbrow humor. But I have to admit, it doesn't say that there weren't women who were a part of these groups of magi or wise people, but it's probably unlikely in those days that it were. I'm glad that women have no barriers to leadership and to ministry in today's world. What were we thinking for all those years? I don't know. Well, on the night that Jesus was betrayed and tortured and ultimately executed, he shared a meal with his friends. And at Christ's table, it's all about the meal and the conversation and the camaraderie around the table. I hope that you've experienced that and are continuing to experience that. And so this moment of communion is a sacred time because the table itself is sacred, not necessarily the one in church that says do this in remembrance of me, but your table in your home is a sacred piece of furniture to experience the love of Jesus Christ, the joy of the gospel and of creation, and the hope that can be found in the words of other people into our lives. At that meal, so many years ago, Jesus took some bread from the table and he broke it and he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take this and eat this, for this is my body, which is given for you. And as often as you eat and eat this, I want you to remember me." And then the text tells us that at the end of the meal, he took the cup from the table and passed it around to his disciples, and he said, "Drink all of this. For this cup represents a new agreement, a new covenant between God and between you for the forgiveness of sins." So Jesus is saying there's a new thing that's happening now, and God's forgiven you for any ways in which you missed the mark or messed up or feel as though you haven't lived up. God's going to cover those things with this. And so Jesus says, drink all of this, for this is good. Because what this is forgiveness for everyone, but most importantly for you. And every time that you drink from this cup, Jesus says, I want you to remember that my forgiveness is given for you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God's face radiate with joy because of you and bring you peace. And may the peace of the Lord Jesus Christ go with you wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storms. May he bring you home rejoicing at all the wonders that he has shown you. And may he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors. Well, it's been good to be with you this morning. Looking forward to being with you next Sunday. I want to thank all of you who have given so graciously of your time, of your involvement, and of your finances to Christ's Table. We wouldn't be here without you and couldn't do it without you. I am, though, in need of packing up all of this equipment and hitting the road. It's time for us to head back to life in Jupiter, and so South Florida, here we come. Until next time, God bless you.